want you to do me a favor, chess kids. Today, I want you to focus only on the other team's pieces. That's right, the pieces at the top of the chessboard, because we're going to be focusing on stopping your opponent's threats. In this chess position, which you may have seen before, Black is not really concerned about the move bishop takes f7, because we will happily take back and get 3 points for 1. We can't castle, but I bet our king's going to survive because White has no development. However, let's pretend on the next turn, your opponent swings his queen on the ladder all the way down to h5. If you were smart, you would stop and ask yourself, what is my opponent's threat? Basically, every turn in chess is kind of like a detective story. You have to figure out why your opponent made the move he did using the clues of the chessboard. Well, I bet you've already figured out there are 2 attackers on the f7 pawn and only 1 defender, which is the king. Now that tells us what we should do on the next turn. We need to create a second defender of the pawn. One simple defensive move is to move our queen to e7 or to the square f6. Both of those moves are perfectly good because we have 2 defenders of f7. Another try would be to play the move pawn to g6, and when we play this move, we block the queen's attack of f7. Now if White plays detective, White will say, hey, why did Black make that move? Well, it's to stop checkmate, but also to attack his queen. Stopping your opponent's threats is part of the solution to today's puzzle. Now, White should probably save his queen, and if you're Black, we're going to ask ourselves the question again. Why did White make the move? Well, he tried to save his queen, that's one of the reasons, but sometimes moves have 2 purposes, and here we see that White has reintroduced the double attack on the square f7. Now, you might make a move like knight to f6 and block the attack. So you see, chess is kind of like a detective story, kind of like a conversation. You're constantly asking yourself why your opponent did what he did, and if you can figure it out, you'll be able to stop his main ideas. Let's move on to our next chess position, and while we do, I'll let you know that there was a certain player who used this idea more than anybody else. Grandmaster Anatoly Karpov used to start every single chess move by asking himself the question, what can my opponent do? He first stopped all of his opponent's ideas before he then thought about how to make his own pieces better. Pretty cool thinking, and it got him to be world champion. Ooh. Let's take White's move here, pawn on d3 to d4. If you're Black, you might want to figure out why he did what he did. Well, part of this is looking to see if your opponent has any checks. And in fact, White does have a check on the next turn. Can you spot it? Well, you may have noticed when the pawn advanced forward, it opened up the diagonal for the bishop. Now we have to ask ourselves, do we care about the bishop checking on b5? I think in this position, we don't. We could make some sort of developing move. And if White gave us a check, well, we can develop a new piece and block the check. But what if I go back to our starting chess position and I remove this Black bishop from the chessboard? I have that power. Now we do have to be concerned, because if we give White the next move and his bishop comes traveling out to b5, the only way to get out of check is to give away our queen. And the reason we're going to lose our queen is because we did not ask ourselves, hey, does my opponent have any good checks? Make sure you're focusing on all of the checks on your next opponent's turn. Next chess position, we're going to play Black one more time. This time, I want you to focus not on the checks, but on the captures. Ooh. Why don't you pause your videos and figure out all the different captures that White can make on the chessboard. Well, there are quite a lot. Let's see if any of the captures are actually something we need to worry about. First of all, White could capture this knight. But if White captures the knight, we'll just take back with our queen. It was 3 points for 3 points, and in fact, we got a new piece developed. That is not that big of a concern. What about this pawn? How many attackers does White have? Well, I think he has 2. 1, 2. But you know what? We have 2 defenders. 1, 2. So I'm not that concerned about the pawn. There was actually a third capture. Funmaster Mike made it quite hard to see, but if you played detective, you might notice it. It's actually this pawn way over here on a6.
Hello.
White is about to capture this pawn. So if you're Black, that gives you a pretty big clue about what to do. Just save your pawn. You could move your rook over, you could advance your pawn. It doesn't matter to me so much as long as you save your pawn. Good chess players have really good board vision, so you have to look at the entire chessboard to notice things like captures from one side of the board to the other. You'd be surprised how important good board vision is to becoming a chess master. One final chess position for you. This is the hardest of the bunch. Here, we need to look several moves ahead to ask ourselves why our opponent is doing what he's doing. Pretend you're white, and in this position, your opponent moves his queen to f6. Time to play detective. Why did he do it? Well, he's coming to invade our king side. Notice we have this big hole right here on g2. And if you play detective well, you're going to notice the queen's going to travel down to f3, and she's going to do a pretty basic queen and helper checkmate on the next turn. Now it's up to us to figure out how to defend the idea. You might want to come up with a couple of ideas. One is queen to e2. But you know what, if you do that, black might make a move like rook to e8 and your queen has to run away. Not really the best solution. Another idea is to move the knight around. Let's move our knight here. But then black's queen will travel down the chessboard, and although your knight can play hero for the moment, you kind of have to worry about one of the rooks traveling here and getting rid of the knight. So you might hold up, but it's a little bit scary. Let's try one more time. If I were white in this position, I really want this bishop gone from the board so it's not hurting my king anymore. I would play the really tricky move pawn to d4. Now my idea is when the queen comes down to checkmate me, I will move my bishop all the way back to f1. I will permanently guard g2, and if black trades bishops, the threat of checkmate is pretty much gone forever. That, I think, is the perfect solution to this whole plan. So in chess, friends, when your opponent makes a move, first ask yourself why he made the move. Is he trying to checkmate you? Is he trying to capture one of your pieces? Is he leading up to a checkmate? The better you get at predicting your opponent's ideas, the more you will act like Karpov.